In the House last year, the Clemente C. Pinckney hate crime bill was passed in the House. It was sent to the Senate, and there were 8 senators that opposed. And then after talking with several of them, it came down to 3 senators that opposed, and the bill died in the Senate. Just in case you're not aware, we have a 2-session window. This starts the beginning of the 2-year session. And the bills that are passed in the House are sent to the Senate. The bills that are passed in the Senate are sent to the House. If those bills are not passed by the other body within the 2 years, then it's dead. And you have to refile the bill again. Well, H 3014 is the bill that has been refiled in the House. And I can't see anybody going against a hate crime bill with what is going on around the world and what is going on right in South Carolina. South Carolina is one of 2 states that has not passed a hate crime bill. And it makes us look very bad because we are on the tail end of this. And all over the world, folks looked at those 9 persons that lost their lives at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. And South Carolina failed to pass the bill. When we have people coming to Charleston from all over the world just to witness that area, and some of them go to Emmanuel and they place flowers still there, and we fail to pass the bill. So I'm saying to all of us that we need to get serious about the hate crime bill. Myrtle Beach, Horry County, did something last week that they are saying we need the hate crime bill. And if it was your family member, your friend, or whatever way you are connected to those 9 persons that lost their lives at a Bible study, that day I spoke to Senator Clemente Pinckney, who was the pastor of Mother Emmanuel AME Church. And he said, I'm headed to Charleston for a meeting. I came to Georgetown. I was the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus chairman. And as I rolled into Georgetown, my phone rang and said, Carl, there's been tragedy in Charleston. As the Black Caucus chairman, you need to get to Charleston. I went in my house, dropped off stuff, freshened up, and I went to Charleston, and I was in Charleston until 4 a.m. that morning. The coroner, when she realized my position and also as a pastor, she said, I need you to be in the room. And it was very hurtful to be in that room when those families were told that their loved ones were killed. 4 days in a row I spent in Charleston, from sunup to almost sun up again, working on what was needed for those families and the Charleston community. And I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. And I would just say to all of you, whatever connection you got with representatives and senators of South Carolina, regardless of where they live, give them a call, send them a letter, asking them to support the hate crime bill in South Carolina so our name would be scratched off from being one of two that's still on the list. Ladies and gentlemen, it is serious. And some people may think that it's not, but don't wait until it comes to your door to get the feeling that, yes, it should have been passed. It is very serious. We've got so much killing going on until it makes you nervous as to whether you should go out after dark or not. Our senior citizens, you see how they are when it's about time to get dark. They rush to get home because they fear what might happen if they stay out until after dark. So this thing is very serious. We get calls all the time. I got 3 calls on the way from from Columbia yesterday to Georgetown about the incident of someone being let out of jail that murdered someone and ended up killing someone again. It is serious. And so if we don't do anything else this year, we need to pass the hate crime bill in South Carolina.
So, yeah. So I was disappointed last year that we didn't get it done in the Senate. I'm more disappointed that this year the business community through the chamber is not viewing the passage of hate crime legislation as a priority. They've taken it off their priority list. And I've been trying to reconcile what that means. And I've concluded that it must not be that important, or otherwise it would have been on the priority list. And we look to the business community, those of us in the chamber, because they're supposed to have the pulse on not only business, but the state. And so I'm hopeful that in conversations, they'll simply realize that the fabric of who we are is what gives rise to the attractiveness of South Carolina as a business community. And this kind of stigma, and Representative Anderson is absolutely right, it is a black eye on our state. And I'm optimistic that this year we'll be able to move the legislation. I'm absolutely convinced that our voices will be such that it will have the attention of our friends and neighbors in the body. The Senate is a complicated creature. She is, because of her rules and those kinds of things. But I think we've got a lot of people of goodwill that's in the body, and it's my hope that we're able to convince them through I think it's another one of these kinds of issues where it takes state involvement in order to move it. And I believe that if we were to ask persons in this room whether or not they believe that we ought to join the rest of the United States in speaking out against hate through legislation, I think all of us in this room would agree that that's what we do as a state, because we know what hate does. And so I think that that's going to be the pulse of the body this year. Can I be wrong? Yeah.
As a white man who has been privileged since the day he was born, I have an opinion. And I don't know if a white man who's been privileged since the day he was born should have an opinion on this issue, but I was elected to this position, and so I'm going to have an opinion, and I'm going to vote on a bill one day for or against hate crimes. And I'll tell you where I am right now. Despite my whiteness and privileged upbringing, this is where I am right now. I yearn for a day where we have a colorless society. I yearn for a day where there is no racism. I yearn for a day where I see no difference, and you see no difference between the people who sit beside you based on the color of their skin. And I despise the idea of anything that further segregates us. And a hate crime bill does that. A hate crime bill does that. I do not understand why, and let me be very clear, nobody here is doing this, but there are national leaders that are clearly what I would call race baiters. Okay? I do not understand why the racist white men of the Jim Crow era are speaking the same language of the race baiters today. Why do we want further segregation in society? Why do we want to isolate ourselves into groups and races? Why do we want identity politics that this person is better than this person or worse than this person and this person deserves more privilege than this person under the law? Why do we want to go in that direction? That feels bad to me. That feels like we're moving in the wrong direction rather than the right direction. If, God forbid, a black man was to walk into my home and kill my family, I wouldn't care if he was white or black. I wouldn't care if he was white or black. I would want him killed, dead. And I'd love to do it myself. And I imagine that's what every single one of you would say as well. Let me say one more thing. You have to have a lot of faith in humanity, the people that are prosecuting these cases. From the cop that makes the arrests all the way to the prosecutor, you have to have a lot of faith in humanity that that person is not in and of himself or herself a racist when charging with a hate crime. Because if he or she is, you wind up in a position, if any of you are attorneys, you know what I'm talking about. I'll give you a quick rundown on it. Most of the time a criminal case goes like this. I've tried murder cases, as has my friend here to the left. He knows what I'm talking about. The way this works is you negotiate, you plead, you agree to things, you investigate. At the end of the day, they say, all right, well, you've been charged with murder. We don't have quite enough evidence to get there, so we're going to offer you a plea of attempted murder. Or, that's not a great example. We're going to offer you a plea of manslaughter. What happens when you now have hate crime on the table because you've got let's just call it what it is, a racist prosecutor? What happens? The prosecutor says, oh, by the way, we're escalating your charge to a hate crime, so you're not going to plead to manslaughter, you're going to plead to murder without a hate crime. This totally changes the dynamics of the criminal justice system and puts not only white people, but also black people, also Muslims, also Jews, anybody who is isolated in their own little fake bucket that we've created or we're trying to create with a hate crime. Every single one of those people in jeopardy. Every single one of them. Now the idea, the general consensus out there, the idea is that white men are going to be the ones committing these crimes and so they're the only ones that are going to be punished. That's not true. That's not true under a hate crime. That is not true. It's anybody. Think about the racist prosecutor. The prosecutor that has never said that he's a racist, has never indicated that he's a racist, but he just doesn't like a Muslim. Or he just doesn't like a Jew. Or he just doesn't like a black guy. We are creating fake cultural, societal buckets that lead us in a bad direction back to Jim Crow, maybe the reverse of Jim Crow.
So,
Make it brief, you're gonna have.
you're wrong. There are other things that are happening in our state that are taking us back. Hate crimes is not one of them. Not having any women on the state Supreme Court is a step backwards. Not having African American males as judges on the circuit court is a step backwards. Hate crimes is not. It's a step forward. And I believe that because people like Stephen Goldfinch are open-minded, he'll come to realize that it's not and be a part of us in dealing with some of what is. The political body is significant. I am honored to be a part of it. And it's wonderful to watch things change, just as how many of us evolved when it came to medical marijuana. I think some others of us will evolve as it relates to hair.
And one more thing, he might not know this, but you might not know this, but this is the guy that convinced me to vote to take the Confederate flag down off the state.